Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Aquastar Deepstar 2 Vintage Silver Star. This watch is available from aquastar.ch for €1,757. The Deepstar 2 is a heritage reissue of the original Deepstar from 1963. It has the original proportions of the Deepstar chronograph from 1962 and also features two of Aquastar's key identifiers: the rotating bezel with no compression table used to time repeated dives, the first and only of its kind, and also the Cyclops-style monocompax counter, which was originally devised by Frederick Roberts, the founder and innovator of Aquastar. So firstly, I want to personally thank Aquastar because they very generously gifted me this Aquastar baseball cap and also this hardback book, Aquastar Anatomy of Design by Dr. Peter McLean Miller. Very high quality book because we have high definition pictures, specifications, technical drawings, and also the specifications of the movements used in the vintage pieces. So this covers all Aquastar pieces from the present day to 1962. And also covers the design inputs of Frederick Roberts, the founder and innovator of Aquastar. So very interesting to read about the heritage of the Deepstar and the inspiration of the Deepstar 2, the piece we're going to be looking at. And it also includes the vintage adverts for Aquastar pieces, as well as the calibers used, technical drawings, everything you could possibly want to know about Aquastar and the Deepstar piece. Absolutely beautiful pictures. Details the bracelets used, and there's just some gorgeous pictures like this one of the original Aquastar Deepstar chronograph, which is the inspiration for this Deepstar 2. Excellent book, so thank you to Aquastar for the book. Right, so firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the Deepstar 2 comes in a wooden watch box, which is protected by a cardboard outer box and this cardboard outer sleeve, which you remove. So you can see on the lid, we have in gilt Aquastar with the brand emblem. You remove the lid, pull down the flap, and the watch box is protected by fabric so it doesn't get scuffed or scratched in shipping, so very good attention to detail. Now, credit where credit's due. Aquastar could have taken the less expensive alternative, the default option of a plastic or cardboard watch box, but this is a mid-tier piece costing €1,757. So clearly a plastic or cardboard watch box wouldn't be good enough. This is solid wood, and it's beautifully lacquered, as you can see, and embossed with Aquastar and the brand emblem. And we have a button push catch. So you push the button to release the lock, and it has a hinge lid, and as you can see, the interior is beautifully finished with an aesthetically pleasing black velour fabric, and the underside of the lid also has black velour fabric with Aquastar and the brand emblem. There's a pocket for the plastic warranty card, and I'm pleased to report that Aquastar watches are covered by a 12-month international warranty, which is very good. So where is the owner's instruction manual? Well, you simply download it from the Aquastar site. You click on the site and you can type in the model of your piece and therefore look up the owner's instruction manual, which is very good. The watch sits on the base, on a padded pillow cushion, which is fully upholstered, and the base is removable with these two tabs. So very good attention to detail, and the quality of the finishing, the upholstery of the velour fabric is very high standard. So a good quality watch box, and they deserve credit for it. Right, so with regards to the dimensions, we have a 37mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47.2mm, a thickness of 13.4mm, and a lug width of 19mm. The vintage rubber tropic style strap tapers from 19mm at the lugs down to the buckle and tang, and as you can see, the buckle and tang is signed to a high standard with the Aquastar brand emblem engraved on the right. Good attention to detail, because if you look at the underside, it's also engraved with Aquastar on the underside. So very nicely finished. Beautiful large bevel, which is mirror polished, and that marks the transition between the brush satin finish flanks and the brush satin finish top side and underside to the buckle. So nice heavy gauge to the 316L grade stainless steel. This is a high quality buckle and tang. We have 200 meters of water resistance and a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating. The clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver sunburst dial. Absolutely gorgeous the way the silver sunburst dial catches the light. I like the large applied indices, which are mirror polished to a high standard, and they complement the mirror polished handset, which are correctly proportioned. So we have two different style hands. We have a paddle hand for the hour hand, and we have a sword hand for the minute hand, and as you can see, proportions are good. One can clearly differentiate between the pointed minute hand and the paddle hand for the hour hand, which is squared off in profile. And I really like the Cyclops style mono compacts counter, which is the subdial at 9 o'clock. 60, 20 and 40, just the right amount of information. It's clearly legible, good size to it, the proportion is good, so you can clearly read the seconds on the mono compacts counter, which was originally devised by Frederick Robert, the founder and innovator of Aquastar. The font is excellent. I like they've retained the original Aquastar font on the Aquastar logo and also Deepstar 20 ATM. Absolutely beautiful high definition crisp printing on the chapter ring and the dial. This is very high quality printing of the paint. It looks sharp, it's not blurry, and it really does capture the essence of a vintage Deepstar from 1962 or a Deepstar chronograph from 1963. Just absolutely gorgeous. Now, the lume used is called Old Light Radium Superluminova, but it's clearly superluminova, it's not radium or tritium. Radium was highly radioactive, so it was succeeded by tritium, which was also radioactive but less so. And then, of course, tritium was succeeded by luminova and then superluminova, which we are all familiar with. It's difficult for Swiss brands when they are producing heritage reissue pieces like this to get the tone, the patina tone of the lume to look correct as per an aged piece from 1962. But credit where credit's due, Aquastar have got this correct, because the Old Light Radium superluminova they're using does have the tone of radium or tritium from the 1960s, which has developed a patina with age. It does look like vintage tritium, so I really like it. I love the tone of the superluminova, and there's a good colour tone match between the applied indices and the hands. So I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, brass satin finish to the centre section, which contrasts with the mirror polished circumference to it. Beautiful high definition engraving. The engraving is done very well. It's not sharp, so it's like laser etching, so therefore it doesn't irritate the wrist. And this is a very flat case back, as you can see, which is unusual, and they deserve credit for this, because this is 200 meters of water resistant. One would expect a thick bubble back profile to the stainless steel case back, but if you look at the center section, it's actually very flat and low profile, and this piece is only 13.4 millimeters thick. Bearing in mind it has a large boxed top hat style crystal, the double dome sapphire crystal does add significant thickness, but the case back doesn't. It's very thin and low profile, even though it has to clear the rotor of the Sellita caliber SW290-1. So very high grade finishing to the underside to the head of the piece. No sharp edges, no burrs to the case back, and no sharp edges. If you look, there's nice bevels and chamfers on the edge of the tips of the lugs, and that means there's no sharp edges to the underside to the head of the piece to dig into the wrist. So it's a very well finished head of the piece. So let's test the screw down crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel coin edge finish crown, mirror polished domed cap, and it's embossed with the Aquastar emblem, as you can see, to a high standard. No sharp edges, no burrs to the coin edge finished crown. Feels grippy and tactile, but doesn't dig into the index finger and thumb when unscrewing it, so it's a very well executioned crown. Let's test unscrewing it. Absolutely silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. It is perfection personified. No resistance whatsoever. It is silky smooth. Absolute pleasure to unscrew it. So, in the unscrewed position, we are now in the manual wind position, so one can feel the tension of the mainspring gradually building up in the caliber SW290-1. Absolute pleasure to manually wind it to its maximum 41-hour power reserve. Feels very smooth. So pulling it out to the first click position is the time setting position, which hacks the movement. If you look at the subdial at 9 o'clock, you can see it has now stopped dead. So it's possible to hack the SW290-1 and set the time precisely to the second. There is no phantom date setting position. The caliber SW290-1 is based upon the SW200-1, which you will all be familiar with, but of course the 200 is a date complication movement. The 290 deletes the date complication. The architecture of both the 290 and the 200 are very similar. The main difference is with the 200-1, you'll be familiar with, the second hand is mounted in the centre of the dial on the cannon pinion. With the 290, the second hand isn't mounted in the centre of the dial on the cannon pinion. It is mounted on the 9 o'clock subdial, as you can see. But there's no date wheel. It doesn't have a date complication, so therefore there is no phantom date setting position. It's an irritation for many collectors that when watch brands use an SW200-1, it has the date complication, and pulling it out to the first click on the crown has a phantom date setting position and no date window. So with this, there is only one click, and we're now in the time setting position. So that's the advantage, and Aquastar deserve credit for not just using a movement with a date complication and a phantom date setting position. The 290 deletes that. It just has the 9 o'clock subdial. So silky smooth to unscrew the crown. No back play whatsoever, clockwise and anti-clockwise. Light resistance to the gearing of the 290. It clearly is a high quality caliber, which is Swiss made. Immediate response. When you rotate the crown clockwise or anti-clockwise, the minute hand immediately moves. There's no back play in the gearing, and that's something I really like about the 290-1. Good solid gearing with no back play whatsoever, and it feels very smooth, very light resistance to the gearing, no friction whatsoever. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. If you look closely at the 9 o'clock subdial, you can see the second hand begins to sweep around the subdial once again. So let's test screwing it back down. Instant thread pickup. This is 10 out of 10 screw down crown execution. The thing to note is it does have a very short thread, so it doesn't take many turns of the screw down crown to screw it down fully and reinstate the 200 meters of hermetic seal. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Very light resistance to it, and the thread pickup is perfect. There's an immediate pickup between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. The threads mesh and interface instantly, and that's something that's very difficult to get correct. But this crown unscrews and screws back down perfectly every single time. One doesn't have to try and find the mesh of the two threads. They instantly pick up. So the quality control of this crown is outstanding. Right, so let's discuss the bezel. So as I've detailed, this is one of the iconic features of Aquastar pieces, such as the Deepstar and the Deepstar 2. It has a rotating bezel, but rather than using the conventional 120 click unidirectional bezels as per contemporary dive pieces, it doesn't have 60-minute markers. The bezel is rotating, but it has a no compression table which is used to time repeated dives. And remember, this was the first and only of its kind. It was a unique design feature introduced by Frederick Robert, the founder and innovator of Aquastar. So it has that dive table on it, and as a result, it's bidirectional. Now, you might expect it to be a friction bezel with a spring without clicks, as per vintage pieces from the 1960s, but this actually clicks. So it's bidirectional, but it has nice solid ratcheting clicks. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever. It's very tight. The quality control of this bezel is outstanding. No play in it, but yet the resistance feels very light. This is actually an example of other high-tier brands and mid-tier brands of how to get bezel execution correct, because we don't have any lateral side-to-side play. It feels very tight, but the resistance of the ratcheting mechanism is incredibly light. But it's firm enough so that the coin edge finishing isn't going to accidentally be knocked out of position when you rub against the watch. So they've got the balance just right. The bezel doesn't feel too tight or too loose. It feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation, and both clockwise and anti-clockwise it feels exactly the same. So nice crisp ratcheting mechanism, and as it's bi-directional we don't need to check the alignment. We can move the loom pip up to the 12 o'clock index, but as you can see the click does perfectly align with the applied index at 12 o'clock. So absolute pleasure to use it, and I really like the large dots for the loom pip, which is inlaid into the mirror polished solid 316L grade stainless steel bezel. The mirror polishing to the bezel is absolutely flawless. This is high tier level finishing. The coin edge finishing is also very high tier finished. Bearing in mind this is a mid-tier piece, they deserve credit for it. Although it's low profile rather than a large scalloped bezel, the low profile coin edge bezel is very grippy. You can get good purchase on it, and even wearing a pair of gloves like I am, I can get a good purchase with my index finger and thumb on the low profile coin edge bezel. The table is very well engraved and then inlaid with black paint, as you can see, very high definition. The numerals aren't blurry and the marks are very high definition, and it's just absolutely gorgeous to look at. And it's good that they retained this. Now, as I've detailed, often Swiss brands producing heritage reissue pieces, they lose the vintage aesthetics, the iconic characteristics of the original pieces from 1960s when they update them. For example, Aquastar could have introduced a 120 click unidirectional bezel to replace this table, and they could have used ceramic, and they didn't. They kept the original stainless steel bezel with the table engraved into it, so it does look exactly the same as the original Deepstar from 1962 and the original Deepstar chronograph from 1963, and I like it. I like they've retained that feature. Right, so let's do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So the loom used is called Old Light Radium Superluminova. So it's clearly Superluminova with patina tone to it. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This is clearly 5 to 6 layers. Now, the light old radium superluminova looks like C3 superluminova. The thing I most like about it is look at the large loom pip on the bezel inserts. It's emitting very brightly, and this is exceptional performance for a loom pip. I have never seen a loom pip on a bezel glow so brightly. It's very large, so it works very well. The large applied indices at 12, 3 and 6 are glowing very well. So the good thing about having those deep stainless steel applied indices is there is a large area and a deep plot, so they could apply 5 to 6 layers. This looks like 0.3 millimeters of superluminova, which is 5 to 6 layers. If you look at the handset, you can see they're correctly proportioned. The hour paddle hand is very large and wide, and also the pointed sword minute hand is also large and wide. So one can clearly differentiate between the hour and minute hand, and the legibility is good because we've also got loom dots at the hour markers. Now it is acceptable not to have any indices or hour markers at the 9 o'clock position because we do have that large subdial for the seconds, but the symmetry is good on the dial. I like it, and the legibility is good. One can clearly read the time, and I really like the loom pip especially because that's very large. It's an example to other brands of how to get it correct. Often loom pips are undersized. This is large, and of course it does perform very well because it's a very deeply infilled superluminova loom pip on the stainless steel bezel. It's continuing to glow for a good length of time, not fading whatsoever. This is 10 out of 10 performance. So the light old radium superluminova, which looks like C3. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this uses the Sellita caliber SW290-1. The SW290 is based upon the SW200-1, which you will all be familiar with. The architecture of the 290 is the same as the 200. The only notable difference between the two calibers is with the 200-1, the second hand is mounted centrally on the dial on the cannon pinion. With the 290, it's not mounted on the cannon pinion in the centre, it's mounted on the 9 o'clock subdial. So the 290 has a subdial at 9, the 200 doesn't have a subdial. That's the only difference. Everything else, all the parts are interchangeable between the 290 and the 200. And in terms of the build's quality, the reliability and the quality control, they are both the same, both high quality Swiss calibers. Now, the thing to note is Aquastar are using top grade Sellita calibers. The SW290-1 in this piece isn't standard or Elabor grade. There are 4 grades of Sellita calibers: standard, Elabor, top and chronometer. This is the top grade. So what that means is the top grade is regulated in 5 positions to plus or minus 4 seconds per day to plus or minus 15 seconds per day. This one has been regulated very well in 5 positions. It's consistently running to plus 3 seconds per day when fully wound to its maximum 41 hours. Plus 3 from an SW290-1 is outstanding accuracy. So it has 31 joules, it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. 41-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. It has hand binding and hacking, which are used for complications. And as I've detailed, this is the top grade. It's not standard or Elabor grade. Top grade is outstanding because of 5 positions with the regulation. So it's an excellent movement, and they deserve credit for not using a less expensive caliber. They could have gone for a standard or a Elabor grade SW290. They went for the top grade. So perfect movement for this piece because we have the 9 o'clock subdial, which is the Cyclops style monocompax counter, which was originally devised by Frederick Robert, the founder and innovator of Aquastar. So they've retained that iconic feature of the Deepstar in this Deepstar 2. So are there any negatives to it? Well, there is only one detail I would change about this piece. It uses a vintage rubber tropic strap, which is actually very soft and supple. Now, it does feel stiffer than silicone rubber. It feels more like FKM fluoro rubber, but I like that because it's an indication of durability. It has the classic 3-dimensional weave to it, as you can see, the pattern, and it's fully perforated, which allows for sweat and perspiration to wick away from the wrist. And when the watch is submerged in water, when you get out of the water wicks away very quickly through the perforations. But it could be further enhanced with the use of quick release spring bars, because this piece doesn't have holes in the lugs and it doesn't have quick release spring bars. Now, it is difficult with these stiff kind of natural rubber straps to get a spring bar tool between the edge of the rubber strap and the lugs without damaging the lugs. It would be easier to remove the strap if it had quick release spring bars rather than conventional stainless steel spring bars. So that's something that Aquastar could consider bringing into the Deepstar 2, because it would just make it easier to exchange the strap for a bracelet, for example. But the quality of the rubber is very good. It does feel stiffer than silicone, but it is soft and supple enough to wear for long periods of time without breaking in. Nice taper to it, and it has that gorgeous texture as per original tropic straps from the 1960s. Now, 19mm, one could consider this a negative because the contemporary lug width is 20 or 22. However, 19 was the original lug width used in many pieces in the 1960s. In 1962, the original lug width of the Deepstar was 19, and I think they've made the correct decision by not updating it to 20. Now, it does limit the strap options somewhat because most contemporary straps are either 20 or 22. 19 is an odd size, but however, it wouldn't look correct because this has the original proportions of the Deepstar from 1962, and I think the 37mm case works very well with the 19mm lug width. If they had 20, it would make the lugs too thin, and I think that 19 matches the 37, so the proportions are correct. And bear in mind, this is a heritage reissue of the original Deepstar from 1963 and the Deepstar chronograph from 1962. Aquastar wanted to retain those proportions, and the dimensions are very close to the original, as close as they could get them, because bear in mind this houses a contemporary movement, the Sellita SW290-1, which didn't exist in the 1960s, and therefore it has to be thick enough to house that. It's 13.4 as a result. So proportions are excellent, aesthetics are excellent, and I like the fact it retains the two iconic features, which is the no compression table on the bezel and also the monocompax counter, the 9 o'clock subdial. So no negatives to it whatsoever. Excellent bezel execution, excellent screw down crown execution. The specification is loaded. This is a top grade Sellita SW290-1. So I think it's excellent quality and excellent value at €1,757. I'm going to highly recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Aquastar Deepstar 2 Vintage Silver. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.